Guest today is Martin Bodek, a New Jersey-based author known for his clever and hilarious Haggadah parodies like the Emoji Haggadah, the Festivus Haggadah, and the Coronavirus Haggadah. But today we're diving into a very different and deeply personal project, Zadie's War. It's the powerful, true story of his grandfather, who survived serving in 4 different armies during World War II, walked over 1,600 miles home, and went on to build a life of resilience, faith, and family. This is Martin's 11th book, and perhaps his most important. Let's welcome Martin Bodek.
Hey, how's it going, Martin?
Great, thank you. Thank you so much for having me and for that absolutely lovely introduction and beautiful teaser and promo. I've got a trailer. I never had that before, but very cool. I appreciate you having me very, very much. Thank you. It's a good day today.
No issue. So let's kind of start out at the beginning. What brought you to becoming an author?
So actually, it's probably my grandfather in the first place. He told me of his World War II stories when I was way too young to properly appreciate, absorb, or even understand what he was talking about.
Yeah.
And his story was wild, and it was so wild even to my 6, 7, 8-year-old impressionable mind that I remember thinking to myself, even at that age, I've got to tell this story. I have got to bring this to people. And that was the impetus for what my career is now, which is writing books. And my grandfather is probably the kickoff. Certainly his story is just so wildly imaginative that it was a proper start to my ambition.
Yeah, when I was reading your background and kind of digging through it, being a veteran myself and being in one army, I can't even imagine fighting in 4 different armies. It just blew my mind. I had to hear more.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, when I do book talks, I poll the audience and I ask them, anyone serve in the armed forces? I take it as an opportunity to thank them for their service and thank you for your service.
Thank you.
And I get interesting feedback about deployments and cousins and sisters and brothers and all different sorts of things. And I say, but guess what? And thank you. And guess what you all have in common? You probably all served one single armed forces. And maybe sometimes there's 2, and that can happen with a lone soldier. A person's family history is in a certain other country, and they feel compelled to serve there. So that happens also, but that's 2. 2.
Nope.
How do you get to 4?
Yeah.
So this question is what got a lot of interest from publishers when I was querying them. This is the book cover, and the subtitle here, the first 2 words, which is 4 Armies, that just gets the attention. That just jumps off a bookshelf. People want to know more. So it's wild. So everyone who serves usually serves 1. Small percentage serves 2, but nobody serves 4. Not in this life, not in this era. No way. No how. But my grandfather did.
And not just served, but also fought with countries as well.
Absolutely.
It's just mind-blowing.
It is mind-blowing. The whole story is mind-blowing. 4 armies, just like, how did we get there? What is the story? Everyone wants to know. As a matter of fact, I start off my talks with the question, because that's what they say you should do in speaking class. Like, ask a question that the audience wants answered. The question is, hi, my name is Martin Bodek, and thank you for that introduction. How does a person get to serve 4 armies? Let's unpack.
Yeah. Absolutely. Let's definitely unpack. So let's start out a little bit. Give me a little bit of history about your grandfather.
Okay, so he was born 1 month after the close of World War I. So December 17th, 1918. So that is exactly 1 month after the close. And his family lived in Romania in a little town called Intervișeve, which means downtown, literally. The city's name is Vișeu de Sus. The county is Marmaros, it was called, and the region is Transylvania in Romania. So for those who know geography, I hope I've painted a good picture of where this exactly is. Just beneath the ridge of the Carpathian Mountains in north west Romania. Family was humble. Dad was a teacher. my great-grandfather. Mom was a stay-at-home mom. This is very typical of the era and of the culture. And they had 4 kids, including my grandfather.
Mhm.
And war hit in 1939, or actually 38. Everybody was minding their own business, doing their thing. My grandfather liked foraging in the woods. That was his pastime, and this would actually be very instrumental in saving his life at many junctures down the road. He knew where to get food where others could not. Very, very important.
Yeah.
Very survivalist, super survivalist. And war hit in 1938. He was at the time set up for life to just sit and study. That's all he wanted to do. Because he loved to forage, he loved to study, he loved to cook in the kitchen with his mom. Those are his 3 pastimes.
Okay.
And then everything got interrupted when the winds of war started swirling around the continent. And my grandfather got a draft card in 1938. That's usually how these things start. He didn't volunteer. He was summoned. As you might know, and if you don't, I'll let you know, I looked up, we have 193 countries in the world.
Mm-hmm.
102 have compulsory drafts.
I did not know that.
Yeah, which is interesting to know. I went looking for this information because I talked to people about him receiving the draft card, and I thought, how often does this happen? Where does this happen? So that, in fact, more than half the countries in the world have mandatory military service. United States, as we know, does not. We are exempt. That's not the way it rolls. And if ever there are cultural upheavals. So he gets his draft card because Romania is currently in a compact relationship with Germany. I don't know if they know what their world ambitions exactly are, but everyone's trying to pick a side. I mean, the Axis and the Allies are forming at this time, and people are trying to figure out where to align themselves. Germany would renege and sever several contracts, including compacts, including the contract, the agreement that they had with Russia to leave them be, which they would eventually completely abandon. So people were picking sides. So Romania at this time in 1938 picked the German side and was aligned with them ideologically, with not really knowing what cards Hitler was holding in his hand.
Yeah.
So Romania provided elementary services like building public works for them, building tarmacs, scaffolds, public works, airport infrastructure, and things of that nature. And when my grandfather was drafted in 1938, this was his mission, because as a Jewish person, he did not have the right to bear arms. That was not a right afforded to Jewish folks. So this is what he did. Basically, public services, serving his country of Romania. Mm-hmm. Beaten for the privilege. That came with the territory as well. But my grandfather did one thing in particular to get him through the day, and that is, as we've already glossed over, he always managed to get a few more calories than the person standing next to him. And this is, in literature, this is called foreshadowing.
Yeah.
When I describe this at the outset, you will see, even as I talk casually, how the constant obtainment of food was ever present and made him stronger, better, faster, literally more evolved than other people who would succumb to their travails and privations. So this is how he serves one army. This is a typical way that he would serve, but an absolutely fascinating thing happened a year later. So first of all, he finished this tour of duty and went right back to what he was doing before. Foraging in the woods, hanging with his with his father in his study, and helping his mom out in the kitchen, because he absolutely loved doing that as well. So you know how when you move towns, the town will recognize that you've just showed up, and they'll send you your jury duty card, right? Because let's have you. So in this instance, it was the complete opposite. The town moved to him because Hungary annexed the northwestern part of Romania. As part of the reshuffling of geographies in response to or in concert with Germany, this is one of the things that happened. This was called the Anschluss, the annexation. So overnight, everyone in my grandfather's town and larger area became a Hungarian citizen, just like that.
Wow.
So as soon as he became a Hungarian citizen, there's the draft card again. He got his draft card. He's like, oh no, I got to go report for duty again. So this is how you get to Army number 2. Like, what just happened? Okay. So that's the deal. He shows up. He's an honorable sort. Your country asks you to show up, and so he showed up. And he did the very same thing he did before. Hungary now was doing also the same exact thing on Germany's behalf, setting up public works, tarmacs, scaffolds, things of that nature. And again, he did the same exact thing, beaten for the privilege once again, and foraging and constantly feeding himself a little more. So now we are in the clutches of Army number 2. The Germans all of a sudden show up in the camp where my grandfather is stationed with his friends. And what are the Germans doing here? Well, they have come to select the strongest, the hardiest, the bravest of the collection of folks who are there. Okay, and where are they going? He doesn't know just yet. But he does know that now he's in the clutches of Army number 3, which is actually the Third Reich. So he is now caught up with the German army. He is in their care, so to speak. Yeah, that's a kind word to say.
Yeah, I was going to say that's probably saying it mildly.
Yeah, exactly. And he's shuffled off to parts unknown. Where is he going? Well, I'll tell you where he's going. He's going to the front lines of Operation Barbarossa. For any of your readers who do not, or listeners who do not know, Operation Barbarossa is to this day, and probably forevermore, the largest military land invasion in human history. And I only realized this years after my grandfather had passed, and I began putting the book together. That was born out of the interview that we had with him about 12 years before he passed away. And I didn't know about Operation Barbarossa. It was a piece of history that went right over my head. No one ever explicated it to me. But I'm looking at the timeline. I'm looking where he is on the map, and I'm like, oh my God, it's Operation Barbarossa. That's where he was. Oh my gosh, he was there in early 1941 for several months. And my grandfather described what his duties were, and his duties basically were to dig foxholes for the German army as they were assaulting Russia, as they were trying to invade the Russian continent, actually. Big mistake, because Hitler did not learn from Napoleon Bonaparte's mistake, but he did so. He invaded in winter. It was a big morass, as they say. And my grandfather described that every day he would come back to the same barracks, and every morning he would come back to the front lines. He'd watch his friends being felled by bullets left and right from the Russian snipers and military. And I realized that what he was describing to me was Operation Barbarossa. And I realized that he was in the South because, as history records, Germany invaded Russia on 3 fronts: in the north, in the middle, and in the south. And in the north and in the middle, they made serious advances, scary advances. They did cut off the supply lines to Moscow, which obviously would put a fright into the Russian what is the word for the people in charge? Management, we'll call it, the administration.
Yep.
But he never moved. So he described that he always came back to the same barracks every day. And I realized, I know where he is on the map. I was able to approximately pinpoint it because he's in the South and he's not moving. He just keeps coming back to the front lines. And this is what he does day by day, by day, by day, every day. He just goes, digs foxholes, survives, and goes back home.
Wow.
So this is Army number 3. In very short order. It's not just over a lifetime. This is compacted into a very small space. Army number 4 happens in a fascinating way. So my grandfather is very sick of watching people die left and to the left and to the right of him. He's had enough. Yeah. He has to make an escape because that's just logical. Otherwise, he's literally cannon fodder, literally. And he probably feels at this point that he got lucky enough, and now he has to take matters into his own hands. He has, he doesn't know it's Operation Barbarossa. He's just a slave digging foxholes, and he has no idea what the larger picture is and what he thinks his survival rate is. But he makes his escape. He sneaks out in the middle of the night. He said at a moment when the Wach was turned away. Wach is the German word for guard. And he escaped with a Czech friend, and he began to roam around the Russian countryside, begging for food in villages and towns. And one day, he described to me that his head was inside a garbage rubbish bin, as you would say in the UK. All right. And when he picks his head up, he's staring down the barrel of a gun. And at the other side of this gun barrel is a Russian soldier who grabs him and throws him into another convoy of folks who have no idea where they're going. And my grandfather is on his way once again, this time under the guard and auspices of the Russian military. And he winds up in a camp called Angusht. He named it. You cannot find these places on a map. You can find the Gulag Archipelago on a map, thanks to important work by historians and journalists, but military encampments you'll never find. I can't find this place on a map, but it's somewhere in modern-day Azerbaijan. So he went from the southern front of Operation Barbarossa to this spot on the map, and his job there was to serve the military. They didn't mistreat him, he reports. He simply served the soldiers food, shined their shoes, brought water for them, chopped wood for them, and so forth. And he did this for several months, and this was happening at the end of 1941. So he's in their care, but he's not. You couldn't say that he was a soldier just yet, but give him a minute, and he will. He's transferred from there north to the Arctic Circle on the Volga River.
A fun place.
Tons of fun. He described when he got there. He goes. In Yiddish, he told me it snowed there 366 days a year. That was the line. I actually looked it up, and apparently it snows there about 210 days out of the year or something like that. And he said to me that it was day for 21 hours, and then it was night for 21 hours, and it was as bone cold as a human could possibly imagine such an environment to be. And fast forward, so in this new camp, which was in a place called Kierovsky Oblast. Oblast usually means the suburbs of Kierovsky. And his job there primarily was also to serve the soldiers, but primarily to chop wood in the woods, and these with gigantic saws. And these would be chopped, sent down the river to a sawmill, and the proceeds of the sales would go to continue funding the Russian effort on behalf of the Allies and hopeful victory in World War II. And this is what he did for 4.5 years. 3.5 years, from 1941 till 1945. Towards the end of World War II, Russia, as history records, and I use that phrase a lot, as today, was running out of personnel and guns. They were terribly running out of both. Most people don't know this. This is, when I talk about this in front of crowds, this is the stuff that people have zero idea about, except for the Russians in the audience, who are always very eager to share what they know as well. 25 million Soviets, in fact, gave their lives in World War II. 1.5 gave their lives, million, at Operation Barbarossa. These are monumental figures. We are only taught in school pretty much what our culture is involved in. The Americans learn the American experience. The Russians learn the Russian experience. Jewish people learn the Jewish experience. Nobody really learns the whole thing. And I think it's if I could soapbox a little bit, we do our next generation a disservice. We need to know everything, but it's hard.
I agree,
because the war is just so big. How much can you know?
Yeah,
but that's our own fault. So I like to say those numbers for the record: 25 million Soviets, 45 million people gave their lives in World War II across the world. It truly was a world war. So they're running out of personnel and guns, and Stalin decides it's an excellent idea to recruit from the masses of the slaves for the military purposes. And so they put up an announcement in camp. They announced that of the slave corps here, if you are willing to sign up to serve in our armed forces and work towards breaking the back of the enemy, then upon completion of your mission, if you have not died in a fusillade of bullets or bombs, you will earn your freedom. And my grandfather thought this was an excellent idea. So he signed up for basic training in early 1945, and he graduated as a sniper. And he became a soldier in the Russian army.
Wow.
Yeah, and so he was a private. So the word, so I looked this up. So the word for private is Radovoi. That's the lowest rank. So he was Radovoi Ben Cian Malik. We didn't mention his name yet, but there it is, Radovoi Ben Cian Malik. Whatever the name of his platoon and regiment was, and towards the end of 1945, he was a Russian soldier, and that is how you get to serve 4 armies in the space of 5 years.
That is. I mean, I've got so many questions.
There are gaps in between. We can break open everything. There's tons of stories in between every engagement. The story is unbelievable, but that is the basic framework of the story. And when I speak in public, I always try to make decisions based on the interactions with the crowd, because the story is so big, because he survived so many incidents of staring death in the face. I always pick and choose. I try to feel out. Let's talk about this. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about his adventures, starvation, cannibalism, if you want, wherever you want to go. It's wide open. But that is the general framework of the story. So
the majority, I mean, I hate to say it, but you're absolutely right. The majority of the people, they don't know much about. They know World War II is D-Day. That's the majority of the knowledge of Americans. In when it comes to it, because it doesn't really break down the battles and the missions and the operations and all that stuff. I follow mostly like the Vietnam era on forward is kind of what's always fascinated me the most. But if I'm not mistaken, America didn't get involved into World War II until towards the end of your grandfather's time, right? Our war started, what was it, 40? Well,
it was December 7th, 1941, a date that will live in infamy. That's what pulled us into it. At the moment my grandfather was at Operation Barbarossa, then the Japanese attacked, and in we go. There
we go. So at this point, when he's working with the Germans, they haven't started getting rid of the Jews and all that yet. Am I correct?
Correct. The final solution, people also make this mistake in history. Germany was working to see if they could disappear people, and get away with it. Right?
Yep.
And they did. They tried some teaser in a few communities, like, let's disappear 5,000 people here and see if anybody raises alarms. Ooh, that worked. Let's disappear 15,000 people over here. And then after a while, it was really working out.
Yeah.
And so machine gunning people to death was the way that they got rid of people. But after a while, that was inefficient. So in 1942, they got together at a conference and settled on the final solution, which was a hyper efficient and grisly and gory way to commit genocide. And that's what happened. So the start of World War II, this thing wasn't in full motion, but 1942 and on, for the next 3 years, it became this disgusting machine.
Yeah.
And my grandfather spent all this time in a Russian military camp. Part of the fascination of my grandfather's story to people who are eager to listen is that he elided. He went around the entire concentration camp experience. That's not, as I just explained, this is not his experience.
Right.
So every story excites the imagination, but this story is completely out of left field. This is not a story anyone has ever heard. This is all my other 3 surviving grandparents also survived concentration camps, but my grandfather went around. It wasn't necessarily easier, but it was certainly different. Certainly a very, very completely different experience.
And so when the Germans was invading Russia, that was about expansion. Am I correct? That was more so about owning land.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, people seem to not register that Germany actually wanted to take over the entire planet. Like that was actually their ambition. Right. And Russia was the big beast, the big prize, because at this point they had already just laid waste to all of Europe. I mean, they owned Poland and every other country that Russia would eventually lose part of. Estonia, Latvia, Ukraine, it steamrolled right through, and Russia was this beast of literally a bear, because that's the symbol of Russia. This bear they wanted to get their hands around, but it was too big to conquer, too long the supply lines, too stupid to try to winter. And that was the beginning, actually, of his downfall. Too ambitious. Just be satisfied with owning half the world. Like, who knows what history may have been if he just said to himself, "Europe's good. I own Europe." Like, dude, relax. You want Russia too? You're not getting it.
Yeah.
Some terrain is physically unconquerable.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's another reason why America itself has never really been fully invaded to try to conquer is just the sheer size. You know,
sea to shining sea.
Yep.
You must know the phrase strategic depth.
Yep.
Not very familiar to folks, but strategic depth for your listeners is any person's ability to escape from a front line because there is a safe haven that's in a very large bubble. The U.S. has unbelievable strategic depth.
Yep.
And so does Russia. You can't. Your supply lines for your invading military are way too long.
Yeah.
It will not work. It will not work. And 2/3 of the terrain is frozen tundra. Good luck.
Yep. Yeah. Absolutely. So what I find fascinating so far is that your grandpa was with a military that was trying to take over the world, and then became a soldier fighting the same people that he escaped from.
Yeah.
And became a sniper. So the rest of the armies didn't even tap into his obviously his abilities, his talents, and just because of race or national origins, and he ends up becoming a sniper, taking out the Germans. And I think that is, especially with his nationality, it's like just unbelievable. It's ironic of how he's now fighting against a country that goes on to try to eradicate a race, and then over land is forced into an army again. Now this time handed a rifle, where he's picking people off.
Yeah. So 2 points. So first of all, complete agreement. I've thought about this. Like, I wonder if at any time during this entire experience, my grandfather woke up and is like, "Okay, now where am I today? Which military am I serving? Oh, I woke up in this hayloft, so I must be on the Russian side. I don't know what's going on." I'm sure he must have had days like that because his experience was just dizzying.
Yeah.
And what's fascinating about his final experience is that he never actually got to fire a shot, right? Like Jimmy Carter said, "I never fired a shot." So what happened was, and you'll find this interesting. So he was sent out on May 5th, 1945. So if you know, May 8th, 1945 is the end of the war. So on May 5th, he's sent out from this Russian camp, and the goal, the mission, is to murder Nazis upon arrival at the German border. That was it, right? There was no secret mission. There's no, I need you to gather intelligence. I need you to blow up an outpost. I need you to gather. No. You show up, and as soon as you get the whistle or whatever, start shooting people. So that was it. That was the mission, and he was ready for it. That was what he was going to do. So he rolls in with this convoy, 3-day travel, and he hits the German border, and he's ready. He's ready, rifle cocked, full metal jacket, all loaded in the chest. You're ready to go. But instead, the announcement comes that Germany had surrendered. and like, you can imagine the shock. Like, he's just sitting there. He's ready to go. He's just, this is what we're doing. And then no, about face, everyone. And one of the amusing, when I tell the story, there's a lot of tension in this moment because he's traveling into war.
Yeah.
And you feel it. And I try to portray how it is. And I break the tension by explaining what my grandfather said. He said to me, he doesn't even know where the vodka came from, because that's not usually part of a military convoy. Yeah. But he goes, it was everywhere. It was just all over the place. We're standing there at the German border. We were ready to kill, and now we're just having drinks. And then after we were done with our merriment, about face, and right back home. And so he never fired a shot. He was ready for it, but he never got to.
Did Stalin honor the agreement that if if you fought, you'd be released. And
Yeah, absolutely. My grandfather, when he said, I want, when you tell the story, he told me in a few punctuated points of his telling me the story of his life. He stopped and said, I want you to tell everyone you're telling the story to in the future that the Russians were very kind to me. And because the peasants and citizens of the countryside, when he was rummaging through, were always kind to him. They served him kasha, he said, and whatever they could find in their barns, and in their meager rations in their fridges and from their fields. Everyone was kind to me and nobody refused me food. And the military honored their word. So he goes, nobody likes Russians, especially not now. Like nobody really likes Russia right now, but they have a history of honoring their word. So he goes, they honored me and they said, you were part of the Allies. We defeated Germany. You are free to go per our agreement. So he was honorably discharged from the Russian military. I don't have those papers, but I have other documents which I have in the book, which are extraordinary and mind blowing. That I managed to get my hands on them. But there was no Marshall Plan in the Russian sphere post World War II. There was plenty of it in Europe. As the embers and the flames and the smoke of the world was trying to calm down, there was help. There was places for lodging and transportation, but Russia wasn't offering anything. Mm-hmm. So as you showed so clearly and marvelously in the trailer, this was now my grandfather's job to figure out a way home. So indeed, he walked home 1,600 miles with 150 of his friends. And this point, when I explained it to the publisher, she goes, 1,600 miles, that's impressive. You know what? Change it into kilometers. So I was like, okay, fine. 2,600 kilometers home was the journey. And he knew his way around. And people ask, was there nothing in his way? And the answer was, it was scorched earth. There was nothing. There were no checkpoints. Yeah. There was nobody standing at any border. It was just free for all, every man for himself. And he knew how to navigate because he was a man of the woods, and he knew how to get there as the crow flies. And he managed to make his way all the way home with the traveling group, all on foot, which is just crazy.
I can kind of co-sign a little bit about what your grandpa told you. I worked with the Russian military in Bosnia. We did a lot of things together, and just so happened the area that I was in was kind of heavily controlled by the Russian area, and they were helping do the same thing we were doing. We're trying to bring peace back to the Bosnian area, and Russia had troops, and we would do PT exercises and competitions with each other. And they were very, very friendly people. For American taste, they were a little bit too friendly. They like to put their arms around you and be in your bubble and
okay.
But they were, very, very friendly, very, inquisitive, had lots of questions and extremely strong and a talented military. So I can see that. I can also kind of picture a little bit because, to get to Bosnia, we drove from Hungary for 3 days through Croatia. And when you cross over into that bridge into Bosnia, the buildings were just insane. They were just destroyed. Schools had 50 cal rounds through them, and you can tell where bombs had gone off and half the buildings were still in pieces. So I can kind of even envision a little bit about, what your grandfather's walking through, obviously a different time. This was 95 or 96 versus, the early 1900s. But at the end of the day, 1,600 miles is 1,600 miles. That's a lot of stuff.
No question. That's a long way. It's unbelievable. It just to imagine it. And people question it. And I say to them, there are no roads. There were no roads from where he was coming from and to where he was going to. How do you think he got there?
Yeah.
There's nobody's offering him a ride. There's no hitchhiking. There's no anything. There's
Nope.
There's like a Winnie the Pooh stick behind him with the little bag at the end of it, and off we go, man.
Yeah.
This is people have a hard time sometimes believing that this story is true, but I've embellished absolutely nothing. Nothing.
Yeah.
There isn't a word of this book that is made up, and there isn't a quote that I imagined. People sometimes like historical fiction, right? When you have an outline of a story and all the conversations are completely imagined. I have none of that. Yeah. This is as it was reported and as corroborated by as much evidence as I could supply, and not a word of it is made up. Not one word.
Well, I think where that comes from is our generation, my generation on, to be honest, would never probably be able to, the 95 percentile would probably have gave up, to be honest. They wouldn't have walked that 1,600 miles. But you look at the people of the 20s during the Depression and the stories and stuff that have even came out of that. Hard times makes hard people. And that's the times that your grandfather was in. You had a choice. It wasn't like you had an option, well, I can go steal something from Walmart because I don't have the money. Well, no, there was no Walmart. There was no stores left. Everything was gone, and that's the problem that the people of today have a hard time envisioning, because we've got everything at our fingertips.
Yeah. This massive abundance.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a lot of my grandfather's experience and personality that courses through me. So I'm a marathon runner.
Okay.
And I'm sure that knowing what I'm made of or figuring it out is absolutely a part of it.
Yeah.
And I cannot get enough of survival books. And I know for sure, and I love Survivor Man and Bear Grylls. What's his name? What's the name of his show? Survivor Survivor Guy, whatever the heck it is. Mm-hmm. I love these shows. I absolutely love them because I want to know. Like, could I do this? Could I stomach this? Could I eat off a diet that my grandfather lived off for years? Yeah. Which was, as he told me, generally speaking, he said it was river water, mushrooms. He was able to identify the 20% that are edible and 80% that are not, and whatever he found inside of bear poo. That's it. Generally speaking, except for whatever else he could manage to dig up or dig out of the forest or whatever he could get his arms around. But that was basically it. There's a part of me that wants to strip down and see if I could possibly do that, but I don't need to tempt it that hard. I'll eat my regular American diet. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I think I would skip the bear poop a la carte.
Yeah.
But again, that kind of cosigns, if you think about it, it's not like you can drive. And if he had been driving, it would have been harder for him to forage because, again, there was no store that sold mushrooms and everything else. So it wasn't like he could just take a straight line. He had to walk to get to a destination. But during those daily travels, he also had to stop to find food.
Yep.
And that is where it is. Where it is where it is. Whether you're a hunter or a forager, it doesn't matter.
But he wasn't the only one. There were he left with 150 men, and they must have and they each of them peeled off to their country or place of origin along the way, and many died along the way as well.
Yeah, I was just going to ask that.
And he was the last man standing all the way at the very end, last stop. In his town in Romania. Everyone else had died or gone off to wherever they were going to. What I cannot imagine this journey, and just knowing where he's going and navigating by the stars, I suppose, or just going somewhere this way is south, and let's just keep walking.
Yeah, and that area. I mean, I was in Germany, and like I said, I drove from Hungary to Croatia and into Bosnia. It's not like Nebraska where it's just flat land, you know?
No, it's mountains and forests and mountains and forests and tundra and more mountains and forests and ice.
Yeah. It's a damp, wet, cold area.
Yeah, but he made it. He made it at the end, and he made his way home. It's unbelievable, unreal.
So as he's walking down Main Street, getting back into house, did he ever say, you know, as he's coming into the town, how he felt? Or, I mean, did he just like sit down and start crying? Or?
Well, yes, he did, but not as a result of being there, but as a result of what he encountered when he got there. So when he came off the ridge off of the Carpathian Mountains, which is where he spent the night, the final night before descending into town, he was probably hopeful. He was probably like, "Oh, what am I gonna find? Let's see what I find." So as he approached his house, he found that it wasn't there. It had been destroyed completely, probably by bombs. I don't really know what happened in the area. I had a tough time researching his particular neighborhood and its involvement.
Yeah.
There may have been a combination of munitions and demolition, manual demolition. Don't know, but what he did tell me was all that was left was the corner of his house, and it was the corner of his father's study. And it was clear that his father's sacred books had been used as toilet paper by whoever used it, and that this corner of his house had become the neighborhood latrine while it was being rebuilt. And my grandfather said, you know, when he described this entire story to me from beginning to end, he just kept motoring. Next story, next person died, experienced death here, experienced sickness here. But he kept his calm. And it was at this moment that he broke down. Both in the moment in real life as he experienced what he experienced, and in describing the story to me.
Wow.
Because to come home and find nothing, and to realize you can't even salvage anything because it's so thoroughly defiled.
Yeah.
That got him. Like death, we'll get past it.
Yeah.
But the erasure of his family and nothing to hold on to destroyed him.
Well, and now he walked 1,600 miles to still be homeless. I mean, there's not even a building there for him to stay in. And even if there was enough roof in that area, like you said, they've been using it as a latrine. He can't stay there.
Exactly. Exactly. Wow. Imagine exactly how you just described it. You hike 1,600 miles to find nothing.
Yeah.
Now what? So at this moment, as he was slumped down in front of his ex-home and crying, he gets a tap on the shoulder, and it's his neighbor, Nina. And she's still around, and she looks at him and she goes, "Benzian, you're alive. Your brother Eliezer is alive too." So my grandfather's obviously very excited to hear this. He hasn't heard from his family in at this point 4.5 years. I should rewind just a moment, because at the moment that he was taken by the Germans from the Hungarian encampment, his parents got a telegram from home. So this, people seem to know. In many militaries, sometimes they will inform the parents of their conscripted soldier about movements. Like if somebody makes a significant movement in the field of play, they will telegram home and let them know that he's changed locations. So in this instance, it was Hungarian military policy that if you go from a camp to a theater of action, you would get a note that says your loved one has arrived safely. But if your loved one was killed in action or gone missing or whereabouts unknown, you would get your loved one has arrived. So because the Germans had grabbed my grandfather, the Hungarian military now consigned themselves to his non-existence. As far as they were concerned, he was as good as dead. So my great-grandparents, my grandfather's parents, received a telegram that he'd arrived, which was code for he's dead.
Wow.
So he had disappeared from their world at this moment and never saw them again. And I'll explain what happened to them in just a moment. So he's excited that his brother's here. He doesn't yet know what happened to his family. And my grandfather described to me what it's like to not see any family members for years and to see his brother materialize out of the darkness onto the street. He said he was an apparition, and then he was a wraith. He used Yiddish words for these concepts, and then a ghost, and then all of a sudden he's standing right in front of me. And he hugged him and he grabbed him. And my grandfather said that they slumped down into the middle of the street and they just cried in each other's arms for an hour. And he said traffic went around us because everyone was familiar with these scenes that were happening all the time. And it's at this moment that Eliezer has to describe to my grandfather that indeed the entire family was murdered in Auschwitz.
Wow.
Every last one. My great grandparents, my great uncles, their children and cousins, and of the larger family. So this was the Malik family. They married into the Gans family and Frieds, and there was 119 total. 12 came back alive after World War II. And my grandfather and his brother were two of them. And it's at this moment that he describes to him what happened. And imagine the overwhelmingness of the situation. You hike 1,600 miles, you find nothing, you find out that your brother is alive, and then your brother informs you everyone else is gone. Wow. Now what? Now what? What does a human do in a life when faced with such a situation? So my grandfather just picks himself up by the bootstraps and begins to rebuild his community. That's what he committed himself to. So he did what he learned in the Romanian and Hungarian military. He contributed a lot to rebuilding all the public works, providing tutelage to the young children in the neighborhood, rebuilding the synagogues and the ritual baths and so forth. And that's how he kept himself busy. Just
wow.
rebuilding everything.
What an amazing story, man! This needs to be a movie. I mean, it really
absolutely. Does. I am not stopping to tell the story until I find this connection. It is without needing to make up a single, you don't have to throw in a love interest. You don't have to throw in other intrigues. It's just, this is the story. A man serves 4 armies, hikes 1,600 miles, survives poisoning and cannibalism, which we can get to if you want. And then he comes home, moves to Israel, serves as a chef for 40 years, and kumbaya. And credits.
Yeah. I mean,
credits.
I have had several guests on, where that has happened in a way, like I had a guy that was very interested in the Andes Mountain crash, and cannibalism happened there too. So I was kind of wondering, was that also something that had happened, as people died, they became a food source as well.
So this is the part of the story that I'm always properly coached on whether or not to leave it on the table or leave it off the table, especially when I'm talking to kids. It's really not for kids. This is not something that can be tolerated. The older you get, the more you can tolerate. So further up we go on the age scale, the more I feel free to say it. But like when I speak to 8th graders sometimes, and I'm very carefully coached, either yes or no. Mostly it's no. But here's the story. Here's the story, very basic. I hinted at the possibility of this when I mentioned the cutting off of the supply lines to Moscow. So Kirovsky Oblast, where my grandfather was serving in the military, was part of this supply line. So when Moscow was cut off, this camp was also cut off. And they had no access to food whatsoever. But a strange miracle happened when my grandfather showed up at the first instance in this camp in Kirovsky Oblast. I mentioned the name. The camp's name was Khrinor. That's how he called it. When he showed up on the first day, they sent him to the mess hall for some nourishment before he is sent out to do his work. And he finds himself staring in the face of his best friend. And he looks at him and he goes, "What in the world are you doing here?" And so my grandfather's friend, his name was Yeruchim Blach, says to my grandfather, "What in the world are you doing here?" So Yeruchim, who's behind the counter, says, "I'll go first." So he says, "I was serving in the Romanian military, and then I was serving in the Hungarian military, and then the Germans came and they dragged me to this camp. I don't know where in near the Black Sea, and then they brought me here. And when I showed up, somebody announced that the head chef had died and asked if there's anybody in the new group here who knows their way around the kitchen. And I thought it would be great to volunteer, even though I have no idea. And here I am. And so my grandfather says, what? That is exactly what just happened to me. So in fact, his friend had been like a month to 2 months ahead of him the whole time, but following the same route to get to this camp.
Wow.
And so clearly when something like this happens in the universe, karma wants something to happen with this. It's not, you can't just have it be this crazy coincidence. So in fact, what would happen as a result of this is that because his friend was in the kitchen, he was able to get my grandfather a little more food, always, until the supply lines were cut off.
Right.
Now, one amazing factor here is that if you died in this camp, you were not buried because it's the frozen tundra of Siberia, which means that if the supply lines were cut off and there was nothing available, well, there is plenty of alternative energy, we shall say, to go around.
Yeah.
So as soon as that happened, it was Yeruchim's task to cook up and serve until they could get proper food again. And my grandfather refused to do this on principle. Absolutely refused. He wasn't going to have any part of it. And he actually went on a hunger strike, as it were. Mm-hmm. And his friend kept trying to feed him. And he figured that, my father's friend Yeruchim figured that if he starves him out completely, he'll finally have to cave. But my grandfather never did. 3 days into starvation, Yeruchim saw that he wasn't succeeding. My grandfather was ready to give up his life on this principle, which is extraordinary.
Yeah.
And he snuck over to the Russian military side and grabbed a few of their rations and brought them to my grandfather. And he said to him, I risked my life for you to do this. They would have court-martialed me on the spot had I been caught. I can't keep doing this. You have to eat. So he ate what Yeruchim brought him. And then the next day, the supply lines were recast. So my grandfather avoided this moral catastrophe, even though in certain circumstances it could be something that would be acceptable. Mm-hmm. But my grandfather never considered it so and avoided the issue completely. And it's just devastating to realize, first of all, the state that this camp had to have been in to resort to this, and my grandfather's principles. He would do anything for survival except for this. He would not cross that line, which is just incredible to behold.
Well, and again, it's not just food; it's also hygiene and things like that are now probably being affected because there is no supply routes anymore. So
right,
you got is what you got. So I'm sure toilet paper and personal hygiene stuff was probably not right there on the shelf for you to grab.
Yeah, I don't think those things were in ready supply. I don't know if that was the focus. I mean, even properly supplied, you're familiar with trench foot, right? You improperly care for yourself, and all of a sudden you're in a world of hurt when it comes to hygiene. So hygiene was the last thing to worry about. First was the energy you could put into your system. Absolutely.
Man, I can only imagine what your grandfather weighed by the time he got back home. I mean, he had to be a skeleton.
So what's interesting about this is there are pictures of him about a month after the conclusion of World War II, and he is not a skeleton.
Really?
Because he fed himself constantly all the way through. It was the one thing that he was careful about throughout the entire experience, to make sure to be fed at all times. If you read Holocaust memoirs, they will always include a chapter of what hunger feels like.
Yeah.
And how killing yourself by starving yourself is not an idea that exists in the world. Nobody does that. You can't. At a certain point, you must put food into your system. It's not a way that anyone would shuffle off this mortal coil. So he was sure to feed himself constantly. And at the end of war, when you see pictures of people surviving at the end of the war, and obviously what they look like hollowed out skeletons, my grandfather was actually not. He was dapper and hardy and ready to go. It's actually quite shocking. I have a picture of him. I don't know if I have it in the book of him right after. I'm holding it right here. Give me 15 seconds to look. If I don't find it, I'll just put it down. I do have it as part of my. Here it is. I do as part of my slideshow. There it is, page 66. So I'll remember this. But this is him.
Oh, wow.
About a month after the war. And this is not a man starving or not doing well. He's doing all right.
And you just imagine the calories that are burnt from walking that terrain and everything else too. Wow.
Yeah, he had to amplify his calorie intake.
Yeah.
And he made sure to procure constantly. He was big on mushrooms. Oh my gosh.
Did he ever, I do believe mushrooms are kind of the superfood anyways, but did he ever say how long it actually from the time that he started heading home, how long it took for him to get there?
He said months, not a year, but months. And if I remember him giving I think he said 3 or 4 months or thereabouts, but months.
Wow. Yeah, so he didn't sleep much either then.
No. But my gosh, imagine laying down for the night, waking up again, feeding, hiking, walking, and again and again and again.
Yeah, wow. Wow, man, what a story. Hey, I will definitely be getting a copy of the book because
sure, you should absolutely. I'll send it to you. We'll hook you up.
Sounds great. Yeah, this needs to be a movie. It really does.
If you've got connections, man, you let me know what those are, and you get a writing credit or any kind of credit. This whatever you want. But I do think if I keep doing this, if I keep presenting, if I keep bringing this to the masses, it's going somehow to fall my way. You cannot get past a human serving 4 armies. There is, in fact, a person who served 3 armies and had that documentary told about him. It was a South Korean fellow who got caught up with the Russian military and then found himself on the French side in Normandy and was captured by U.S. soldiers. So he was in the clutches of 3, and that was good enough to have his story told publicly. And if I can get a hold of these people, I want to tell them, I got you beat by 1. I'll take your 3 armies and I'll raise you 1, and let's get this cracking.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Martin, I'm going to bring you forward and give you the opportunity to tell everybody where they can get the book and where they can follow you and where CBS and all these guys can contact you to make this movie happen.
All right. Well, hopefully. So it starts with everyone here making their way to my one-stop shop, which is martinbodekbooks.com. You can find me there. You can find what I'm up to and updates and books that I'm working on and everything. I've got everything warehoused in that one place. So martinbodekbooks.com is your destination. Find me there, read my stories, and help me get this to the silver screen if at all possible. I'd be eternally grateful.
All right. Well, I'm going to throw the exit video out. If you can spare with me just a few minutes, I'll be right with you. I appreciate everybody that's listened. Y'all take care, man. Have a great day. And I promise you will not hear another story like this. So make sure you reach out, grab the book, and follow. And if you got those connections, I want to see the movie. So let's make this happen. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.